We also stream them live, so like, if you're not here, you can watch them. Sorry.
All right, let's get started. Mike, stop knocking. What? No. Microphone. Microphone? There we go. Is that better? Yeah. How about now? Now it works. I can also just not use it. Awesome! Welcome to DenverScript! Raise the hands. Who's a first timer? Wow. Damn, you know? Look at that turnover rate. Awesome. Well, thank you, newcomers, old comers. Thank you for being here. These things are not possible with the free beer, the free venue, and the free pizza without sponsors. So, co-talent. That is the venue you are sitting in right now. They are not only sponsoring the venue, they're also sponsoring the beer. And if you're in the job market for a new tech job or need help finding someone for a role, you should definitely talk to them. They're great people. Go Spot Check. They're sponsoring the food. Go Spot Check is a real-time data collection platform. Basically, we help auditing. Oh, I work there. You'd think I'd have a better elevator pitch by now. Basically, they help people like Pepsi and Jim Beam and all those companies go to do like field auditing and do data collection on how their products are being represented out in the field. So thank you, Go Spot Check. Front-end masters. How many? We still three? Yeah. So front-end masters. If you don't know what front-end masters is, it is a video online learning platform. Steve, actually, who's speaking tonight, is he's gone. He has a few courses on front-end masters. So we'll be giving away three-month trials, which are worth about $100. So stay tuned for how you win said 3-month subscription. Guillermo is now going to give a spiel.
Hello. Thanks everybody coming out. We're less than 3 weeks away from the Develop Denver conference. Show of hands, how many people here have heard of the Develop Denver conference? All right, significantly more than the other meetups that I've been stopping by at. Develop Denver, it's August 15th and 16th, really great conference. How many people here have been there before? Okay, cool, yeah. So, really great time. The thing I was telling you was that it's first and foremost a community-based conference, right? So, what you'll see is instead of speakers being flown in, all the great talks you're going to hear are people from the Denver area who you'll be running back into at meetups and things like that. There are, I believe, 5 different categories of talks. There's product design and development, UI and UX. There's traditional software development talks as well, and the majority are on that. It's language agnostic, so you'll see stuff on just patterns in general, on JavaScript, on whatever else. There's a DevOps track, and I think there's still going to be some career advice and career management stuff as well. So those are different categories. There's 4 different tracks going on, so it's very much a choose your own adventure kind of conference. So you get the schedule, you see what you want to go to, and you kind of hop between them. Some of current and former speakers, Steve has spoken there before. He will also be on a panel this year. Matt has spoken there several times. I spoke there last year, and I'll be speaking there again this year. It's a really, really good time. What else? If you go to that link, developer.org/discount tickets, and you use that discount code, you get 20% off. Normally tickets are $249. You can get it for $199. One other thing that I will say is that, as I mentioned, how it is first and foremost a community-based conference. The goal is to grow and foster the Denver community. So that being said, if the $199 is still a price target that you can't hit, but you want to go, please reach out to me and let me know, and we'll figure out a way to get you to go. We really don't want somebody who wants to go to the conference who doesn't go because of a financial situation. So it's a really, really great time. How many people here have been to Develop Happy Hour? The Develop Happy Hour was made as a spin-off of the Develop Denver conference because everybody's like, this is so much fun, and I want to wait another year for this. So we all get together once a month, just in different bars and get together. Because of that, Thursday night on the 15th, Develop Happy Hour will be immediately after the conference, and it's a sponsored bar tab, so it's sort of like a mini first day party. And then there's the after party on Friday. It's just a really, really great time. Baltimore Peak Hackathon, you can see a lot of like people getting drunk as they code. So some of you guys have heard of Baltimore Peak Hackathon. So it starts in the middle of the afternoon on the second day. With every commit that you do or every test that you run or whatever else, you have to take a sip of beer. And so the way that closing ceremonies kick off is with the presentations with Baltimore Peak Hackathon. Like everybody's been drinking the past 5 hours. It's like talking about whether or not their code works and why, and it's a really, really, really good time. Some really fantastic talks. If you have any questions about it, feel free to ask me. You can message me on Meetup or on Denver Devs, and we'd love to see you guys out there. Appreciate it.
Who's already bought their tickets? Need to work on it, Guillermo. Awesome. So DenverScript is an open collective, which means we can take donations as a nonprofit. So Garrett and Kylie have been for a while recurring every month giving us donations, but we have a new one. Connor, are you in here? Hey, awesome. Thank you, Connor. So I won't go into super deep detail about this, but these donations do help us cover costs and different expenses like a Meetup account and being able to live stream, like getting an actual live stream set up other than having a laptop would be really awesome. And just being able to improve the Meetup and better deliver content to everyone. So if you can, please get on our Open Collective page and donate. Cool. Did we make a new document?
Fuck. We were all really busy, but that's okay. So while you pull that up, what's going on in JavaScript land? So this is the part of the meetup where we talk about new things that are going on in the language, in different frameworks, in software development in general. Usually what we do is we go over, usually what I get really excited about in JavaScript land is the new releases of Chrome and Chrome DevTools. They release them every 6 weeks, so that means that like every third meetup we don't have one to talk about. So we don't have one today. What I'm excited about is Develop Denver Conference is coming up on August 15th and 16th. So what are you guys excited about? It can be literally anything at all. Now, this could be something where like news you heard about stuff coming out in the language, new exciting stuff is going on at a very high level, or it could be like your own personal high five moments, just like a thing that's been around forever, but you just finally figured it out and it was a really exciting moment for you. So what are you guys excited about?
It's been rebranded to Fuck Yeah Moments.
Oh, sure. Fine. That works.
Anytime I use for profanity, it's great.
No, yeah, nailed it. Okay. What are you guys excited about? Yes, in the back. What is? Yes. Yes. That is super exciting. That's we're talking about today, right?
No.
We're not? It is super exciting though. So
it's not fun.
Huh?
It's not fun. So
it's in stage 3. We're getting there. So do you want to talk a little bit about like what that is and how it works?
Whenever in Angular or anywhere JavaScript that you have, whenever you have an undefined variable, or like something dot something dot something, and anything is undefined in the chain, it's just going to break. But with this, you just put a question mark there and it's not going to break. Yeah,
it's super, super cool. You guys should look it up. So like, who here's run into that problem before where you have like a nested object attribute you're trying to get to, and it's like something dot something dot something, and then it says cannot find, something of undefined or like of null or whatever. You just get this runtime error and everything crashes. Yeah, right? Like who has that and hates that? Right, exactly. So what he was talking about, it's in stage 3. It's really cool. Instead of doing like dots on those, you put question marks. And then what happens is that if any of those along the line are undefined or null or whatever, it just silently just like says, okay, the whole thing is undefined instead of giving you a crash. That's super cool. Yeah.
That's just went into TypeScript, or it's in the next release.
In TypeScript as well?
Yeah.
Oh, they already have it today?
It's either in this one or the next release.
It's the next one.
Super cool. And actually, sorry, in the back, so thanks for being the first one to speak up. So you get a Front-End Masters 3-month trial membership, so round of applause. And then, so for the other 2, keep contributing stuff, and then what we'll do is we'll do a random raffle at the end, and then that's how you get one of the other 2. So what else are you guys excited about? What's that? Great. So congratulations, you get a front-end master subscription. So what else? Like I said, it could be anything at all. Like I said, it's been around forever, but you just figured out how to like work this new framework, or you figured out a gnarly bug that you're working on. What are you guys excited about?
JSON parse is over 2 times faster than UV8.
Yeah,
That's what they said.
that's pretty cool.
I was just reading up on like some JSON parsing stuff, and it's now 2 times faster. So
Sweet.
go ahead and use it.
Yeah. So if you were having like big performance issues with JSON parse, we've got a fix for you.
And you were using the alternatives.
What's that?
And you were using one of the
Yeah,
alternatives.
exactly. Right. So, you know. What else? Come on, guys.
Anything?
Literally anything at all that you're
Even like
excited
a-
about that even as technology adjacent. Yes.
Cutting out jQuery from the project that I'm on to
Yeah.
like move towards Vue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a fun accomplishment, right? You're like finally moving past
Well,
jQuery.
we're not past it. We're still.
But you're moving through it.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about that transition so far?
Transition. I don't know. Like Vue is more declarative.
Yep.
jQuery, there's like this sections in the app where jQuery will perform different transformations, and like it's super hard to reason about because you'll see like just the way it's written, it like tells it what to do instead of
How to do it?
yeah. Or
Right.
Maybe I flipped that. but-
No, you did it right.
Yeah, it's like it's easier when you have like the different states of data that you know what's possible, what's going to happen next. I don't have to like go through files or as many files figuring out what this weird because jQuery kind of hides state.
Yep.
The way it's on our project, and so I like
Cool.
bringing that state out.
Who here doesn't know the difference between declarative and imperative? It's okay. There you go. Yeah, there you go. If you don't, you can talk to him after, and he can tell you about like why they moved there and what they did. Who else? There's a hand in the back, right? Yeah.
Not specifically JavaScript, but changed my life. I discovered ngrok.
You started what?
ngrok.
ngrok?
N-G-R-O-K.
Okay.
It's a free HTTP tunnel to give you public-facing.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Super cool. Yes.
If you do any OAuth, which I do a lot of, it is badass for running stuff locally.
Yeah.
Giving a public-facing URL, being able to run your redirect URL.
Yeah.
It's one of those tight ass ones like Salesforce. It sits on a redirect and will not accept.
Yeah. A local. Yeah.
It's free.
N-G-R-O-K. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's super cool. If you guys haven't used it before, it's really neat. It's a little library that you do, and you run it, and it gives you a public-facing IP that you can have a different server or machine hit without just going on through localhost. Yeah, that's super cool.
It's super shit.
Yeah.
You
So you
just
said-
set ngrok HTTP your terminal.
Yeah.
And it just gives you a link, and that's public.
Yeah, exactly.
Your server's running.
Yeah. Really neat way to make sure if you want to like, especially when you want to do testing and you want to like get outside of your local host domain, and you want to see, okay, can I actually go out to the world and back in again, that kind of stuff. It's super great for that.
That's similar to portmap.io.
I'm not familiar with Format, but if it does that, then yes.
Pretty much.
Yeah. What else? Anyone? Let's do one more.
I'm not sure how new this is, but the element selector in Chrome DevTools,
Yep.
it will tell you the color contrast difference between the text and the containing element, and if it passes WCAG minimums.
That's awesome. And if you would have, that's how I know you weren't here like 3 months ago, because when that first came out in DevTools, I was super excited about it then, and we did a whole little thing on it.
I'm pumped about it now.
Yeah, it's really cool. So what he's talking about is, so now if you select like the color picker or the element inspector, and you select like some text on your page, it will it'll show you like a box with like a line between it of the different colors, and everything like above that line, any color you pick there is accessibility like approved in terms of like this has got a good contrast and easy to read. Anything below is not. And so then it'll put a little dot on what is the color background you have contrasted to that, and it'll give you a rating on how you're doing for accessibility. The cool thing is you can use that line then to just pick any other color to make it more accessible. Pretty neat.
Because before that, we had to open it up in Photoshop and copy hex values and use an online tool. So
Yeah, super cool.
Sped things up.
DevTools has been doing a lot of really cool stuff about their element inspector. Okay.
All right, so if you spoke and put something up here, talk to that guy.
Yeah. Talk to me after. and then we'll get to you guys some front-end masters trial membership. So yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So this is the part we like to say job announcements. If you have a job that you'd like to announce, please come to the front and announce it. Usually there's a more awkward pause, so thank you.
We need developers. So myself and this guy right here, Severin, we work for a company called Pan. About 3 months ago, we raised about $10 million with a really awesome investor, so we're growing our team right now. We have 6 engineers. We're looking to be at 12 by the end of the year, and likely 30 to 40 by the end of next year. So if you or any of your friends are a mid to senior level developer, we're looking for those right now, as well as a director of engineering. So yeah, feel free to talk to me whenever. Oh, that's probably helpful. We build corporate travel software. Our big use case is candidate travel. So Acme Corporation needs to hire a big new team. They're going to fly out 300 people a month onto their on-site locations. We manage that external travel process, and then several areas around US travel.
How great is engineering culture?
It's wonderful, Severin. Thanks for asking. Yeah, we have a really fun culture. We take a lot of ownership in the projects that we work on, and yeah, I've been there for about 2.5 years, and it's the longest job that I've held without getting bored. So it's pretty good.
That's important.
Yeah.
Watch yourself. Again, watch yourself.
This is a difficulty 3 on the transition to the stage. Thanks. Hi, Kevin. I work at Quizlet. It's an ed tech company. Our tools are used by about 2/3 of all high school students in the U.S. And we're continuing to expand in the U.S. and internationally. We're hiring both a senior full stack engineer and a mid-level full stack engineer. Also, a couple other roles. You can check them out on quizlet.com/careers.
All right. Any other job announcements?
Hello, I'm Connor Hindley. I'm a software engineer in a company called Tanium. We do cybersecurity and systems management. We're based out of San Francisco and Durham, North Carolina. But there's about 20 of us here, and we're growing more here. I'm trying to get an office, so we need more people to be here. So yeah, find me after.
Awesome. Thank you. And also thank you for coming to sponsor.
Doing my part.
So I have a client that is in Broomfield. They're looking for a UX designer. They're looking for JavaScript, CSS, and HTML for a full-time opportunity. So if you want to have a phone conversation, I'll be here after.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. So those who announced the job, raise your hand. If you were in the job market, remember those faces and talk to them afterwards. Such a matchmaker. Also, call for speakers. We're always looking for new speakers, so please reach out to us on Twitter, Denver Devs, meetup.com. There is no reason you can't get a hold of us if you want to speak about something. So if you got something you want to give a talk on, let us know. Any questions on that?
You can also ask us like right now. Like, do you want to talk like right now? You can talk right now.
No, not up here, but to us.
No, if you have a prepared short talk,
Yes.
that's running right now.
They're only saying that because we couldn't find short talk, so we're giving it.
Right, we made like a little thing that we're going over. If you have a prepared and ready short talk, you just go right now. No?
3, 2, 1.
Bunch of slackers.
You need 10 minutes to do a long talk. I left my laptop at work, so you can just.
Great.
We're organized, I swear. Awesome. So the short talk will be given by Guillermo, Mike, and I. And can we enhance this?
Pass.
Probably not.
You know, we were talking about accessibility earlier. That's not easy to read. Well, I just pulling that up. One thing I forgot to mention about the JavaScript land stuff. All joking aside, we only have so many slots available for talks, right? But there's a lot of really smart people in the audience who are doing a lot of really cool things. So one of our favorite things about this meetup is that so many of you come out and so many people are involved. So once we're done with the talks here, we have pizza and beer left over. If you heard anything with your neighbor that you thought was interesting, ask them about it. We're a really good community here, so rely on each other. We have lots of great people back here. It's not only people who come here.
So cool. So we were going to talk about some of the new features that are in ES 2019. I'll go first, seeing I only have one and it's short. I wasn't willing to take on much. So the first one I'm going to go over is optional catch binding. So if you've done a try catch ever, you always have to do like the error from the catch. That is no longer required. So if you're wondering, like, let's say you had try and you're like trying to parse like a JSON file. If it fucks up and you're trying to do JSON parse, you know it's because it couldn't parse it. So whatever error that the catch was going to give you is not going to be that great. So it's actually just better for you to give your own message. So it's just like your way of being able to give a custom message without having to pull in their error message. That was literally it.
Nice. It's pretty sick. Yeah.
You don't even you just do catch and curly. You don't even have to do it. You don't have to do it.
Ooh, the classic catch and curly.
Moving on.
Yeah.
I grabbed a couple of really straightforward ones. There's not much to talk about, but the reason I did want to bring them up is because flattening arrays is now going to be native to JavaScript. Right? Exactly. So just the array prototype will now just have .flat on it, and you can flatten arrays. If you're not familiar with flattening arrays, this picture is actually a really good example. If you have an array nested inside of an array, you call it flat on it, it'll extract those values, make it all flat into just one array, and remove essentially the inside brackets. And then the other one, down here, number 5, we're not going to go through all of them, just the ones that we liked on this list. Number 5, trim start and trim end. It's essentially a little bit of sugar on top of just trim. You can either do it at the beginning or at the end of the string. Neither of them are mind-blowing, but the reason I wanted to point them out that I thought was cool is that as we see the language that we work with evolving over the years, we're seeing it like slowly start catching up to, and in a lot of cases starting to replace some of these low-level libraries we relied on for so many years, right? Like Lodash and underscore were so huge for so long because the language didn't have these things, right? So it's really encouraging to see these things starting to get worked in, and you now have native options for some of these things. You remember, like even like Mac filter and reduce has been around for now a while, right? We used to rely on these libraries for that kind of stuff too. So Flatten is one that like I feel like most Lodash downloads were like just like Flatten. So cool. Those are the ones I liked.
Or to write your own.
What's that?
Write your own flat.
Nerd.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I actually wondered about that today.
Was it? You want to talk about it?
No.
Dude, we're talking about
All right, here's what you do. I think we still got time. You turn it to a string, and then you regex out all the brackets. Out of brackets. Done.
That's actually more straightforward than this.
You actually call it that?
No, I think you use join or split.
Okay.
Yeah, you split on the commas and put it in new brackets.
I was going to say, Crockford would not be happy with you that you use an eval.
It's not a road I want to walk down. What are we talking about?
I don't know. What did you say? You said you do from entries.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I even took some notes on it. So object from entries basically lets you do the opposite of what object.entries does. So object.entries will give you back an array of like tuples of the key value pairs. This will basically let you take key value pairs in a tuple and put them back into an object. Pretty cool. You can also throw a map in there, which is also like a neat thing. That's cool out. Slow down, yeah, it's not, they don't show it there. But if you throw in a map, which is also an iterable that basically makes like an array of tuples, whatever. I'm smart, I swear.
Hey, I'm so smart. SMRT.
So it'll allow you to take a map and convert that into an object, or take an array of arrays of tuples and put that back into an object. So kind of a neat thing. I don't know what I would use it for, but hey, it exists in the future-ish time. Soon. And then you're talking about swords. Yeah. So I remember mentioning this a while ago, that the new version of V8 and then also in Chrome 70, it was switching from an unstable quick sort to a stable tim sort. So those are like two different algorithms. You can research that on your own time. Do not ask me about it, because I don't have the answer about how they work. But the neat thing about it is that if you have an array, or like we have an array here of these stars, and we have the distance, and if we're sorting by the distance, if we have two things that are the same distance away, it'll maintain the order that they are in the array if we compare on the distance. I think that with the unstable, it would actually like switch the order, or it would just be random, right? It'd be unstable. So yeah, so that's pretty cool stuff. I think the only JS engine that still uses an unstable sort is Chakra. And that's only if you have more than 512 elements in your array.
The old 512 Chakra.
There you go. I think we had plans on a lot of good things.
Yeah.
The old 512 Chakra. Yeah, the old catch curly.
Catch and curly.
Catch curly.
That is really cool though. So when it sorts it, it keeps the order that it was in if they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
That is cool. Yeah. Because if you're had to deal with that before, that is not fun. Or like you sorted stuff, but the two things come in, they're exactly the same, and you have no idea what order they're going to come out in after. So yeah, it's not great.
That's why you just write your test to always do the sort and then compare the sort against itself. I sorted this thing, and when it's sorted, it should be itself. There we go.
You write tests?
Because I'm on camera and somebody might see me. Yes. But yeah,
Sweet. Great.
Can't hear me?
All right. We're going to. I think we
Yeah,
killed it. I think we
Anything
killed
else?
All right, we fucking nailed that,
it. I think
right?
this is great.
Awesome. While Steve gets set up for the next time, it's a great time to do a bio break, get a beer. If there's pizza left over, get some pizza.
Please do.
We came in at under 7 minutes.
Oh, no, you're good. Without practicing. And you got yourself figured out? I mean, it's figured out some way. How long have you watched yours?
I remember promising. I remember that check. I didn't drive today.
It's supposed to be like some slow fucking shit. I'm not about to buy license to it right Like one of my favorite bears in my or regardless of one of my
Really? Like, the brewery tour I'm going to get Dublin is just, it's all about tours. So you walk in and see each other. And there is no actual, like, airport, it's just a airport where they have signs going up and everything. That's shit, I know that. Although the coolest thing about it is you can go to the very top bars, to overlook all the Dublin, it's just glass all the way around. It's solid. What's what? Oh yeah, I know where it's that's cool. And hopefully, apparently I'm going to the top floor.
Alright! So I used to be a middle school teacher, so I have a whole bunch of obnoxious things I can do. Remember like not at all? When you give me one spot? Yeah, it's called something. What's wrong with these teachers? Yeah, you hear me? You hear me clap once? You hear me clap twice? Yeah, I have a alright, well let's do this. So I don't have a CS degree, but I was a public school teacher. And I quit right after getting the license to be a principal, which is a ridiculous idea and so I spent a lot of my career with a lot of imposter syndrome until I got promoted to principal engineer. When I was like, I am literally certified in this. I'm a licensed principal. The engineer part's still a little flaky. All right, so let's do a few quick disclaimers. Disclaimer number one, the fonts are jacked. The reason for that is because I'm an asshole presenting from an iPad. The reason for that is that my laptop is probably on my desk at work. Cool. The other thing I want to do is, so originally I started preparing this talk for Twilio Signal conference next week, which is a weird conference, right? It's a weird conference insofar that it is, just gonna turn you up a bit. All right. Nobody has ever tried to turn me up. It's usually down. I'm also moving it closer to my mouth.
Way better.
Yeah. All right. So Twilio Signal conferences, they're kind of like, you know how like Google has I/O and Apple has WWDC. It is their kind of look how special we are conference. Really bad for live streaming this. This might be my last day at Twilio. And kind of for all the kind of, it's about the people who use the Twilio products, right? And so it has got a mixed audience. So like, if you were to go to like JS conferences, right? Or perhaps you would go to DinosaurJS, like I don't know. Organize it. Like that's a developer-focused conference, right? This is a kind of a mix of like product people and maybe some engineers and other just humans who might want to come to this talk. So the talk itself is kind of like, when we go through the slides, is written for that kind of like mixed audience. You are not as much of a mixed audience, right? You are, I'm going to assume, all right, raise your hand if you're an engineer. All right. Designers. Designers. All right, cool. Just out of curiosity, junior engineers, raise your hand. All right, mid-level, whatever that means. Senior, which is a title you can get after 3 years. And then you spend the rest of your career bitter. Then you can't get a promotion because you got senior at like 23. I didn't know.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah. So what I intend to do for this is kind of be the director's cut for engineers, right? And so we'll see some slides. I want to get a sense of like how to like calibrate this correctly. So hi, my name is Steve. I am a senior principal engineer, and as of 11:30 this morning, front-end architect at Twilio. We'll talk a little bit more what that means. It's not a promotion. It's fine. It's more responsibility for the same amount of money. So we're going to talk a little bit about what a front-end architecture is, right? Because it is a little bit less of the, hey, we're going to pump out this feature. It's more of like, okay, over time, how do we not paint ourselves into a corner? The best way to describe my job is my senior vice president of engineering explained it really well. I'm like, you know, we have to rewrite this app. We used to have to rewrite the app that I used to work on an annual basis. So you could measure years in rewrites, right? Every rewrite was one rotation around the sun. And I was like, we have to rewrite this again. I'm going to lose it. He's like, you don't have to worry about that. What do you mean? If we have to rewrite it again, you don't work here. I'm like, that sounds mean, but like, it gave me a lot of clarity to what my job is. So we do architecture in a really interesting way at Twilio, which is we have a chief architect. His job is to think about the 5-year plan for the company, right? And he's very good at his job. We had a GDPR, which is when we changed all the privacy laws in Europe. Every company had to send an email. And it was SendGrid's second. SendGrid was acquired by Twilio. We send email. It was their second largest send day ever, and we didn't notice, right? Which is those long-term thinking paid off. Now, most times, because we have friends in product and friends in accounting, we don't often get to think about the long-term plan, right? It is, how do we get this feature out? And at a certain point in a company's growth, yes, if you do not get features out, you don't exist. Right, but at another point, if you are having outages all the time and everyone's working into the middle of the night, then like that doesn't work either, right? And so how do we do these like long-term visions? So our chief architect thinks about the 5-year plan. My job is to connect the 5-year plan to a kind of a 1 to 2 year reality. We have principal engineers on the team who think about the kind of 6-month to 18-month plan, and the senior engineer might think about the next few sprints and like, what do we need to do, right? And the whole goal is like, how do we not make short-term thinking that we have to pay for later? So part of this talk is also to convince our friends in the product that this is a good thing. So kind of table of contents here. We are going to talk a little bit about what does it mean to have a modular code base, right? And the kind of TLDR on that is something where you can change your mind later, right? Something where you have not totally fucked yourself. We'll talk about the kind of like layers of an application, a little bit about creating just like UI, right? I think that there is a lot more to front-end applications than just the UI layer, but like that is the thing that we're concerned about right now because we want to be able to reuse those places. Like we have relatively few front-end engineers for hiring, you know, and like figuring out how do we actually ship like several $100 million of product with effectively around a grand total of 35 front-end engineers, right? Like you don't do that by accident. And then we'll talk about like the fun wins you get for deployment just from doing this. Cool. So this is, we're going to do kind of a case study. I told you about the app that we write every year. This is marketing campaigns. And like most companies rewrite their apps every year. Even companies that say rewrites are bad. Rewrite is always bad. You should not rewrite your app. It is the second stupidest thing you can do. And you should only do it when everything else is tied for first place. And it's basically, you know, rich email headers, drag and drop. You create these like emails that have to work in Outlook 2013. Kill me. Microsoft Word's rendering engine. That's all I'm gonna say, so on and so forth, right? And it's a, you know, it's almost a desktop class application in the browser, right? Like the problem with like full stack engineers is that because they wrote some jQuery form validation in 2008, they think that they understand the front end. Not understanding that like Excel is effectively a front end application, right? Like no one like looks down on iOS and Android apps the way they look down on doing some front end web code, even though it's a broken document viewer from the 90s. So we had an opportunity about a year ago when we moved into AWS to be able to, an opportunity to be able to rewrite our application. Wow. And so this time around it was, hey, what if we did this right and what if we built a platform for the next 3 to 5 years? So that's kind of be the is what we learned from going through that process. This app went into production. Hopefully it stays in production. And it took about 18 months that I never want to do again. Right, so what did we learn? What can you think about when starting a new application? So on and so forth. So what do we mean by modular? Again, broken document viewer from the 90s. It was made to view a document with super cool words that you could click on to go to another document. How does Google Drive exist? Right, like how is that even a thing? Right, like I don't know. So the idea that most of what we're building is not built into the platform. Right, so it behooves us extra so much that we go ahead and figure out how do we actually think about and structure the applications, because they're not given to us by the platform. They're not kind of like just a known thing, even though like, if you want to be a JavaScript thought leader, go read like UI papers from the 70s and 80s and just like rethink them in JavaScript and everyone will think you're amazing. We did get a certain separation of concerns at a certain point, right, which is HTML for the kind of layout, CSS for the styling, and JavaScript for the behavior and interaction. That's not necessarily modularity, right? Like, that is simply beginning to separate some of our concerns. It doesn't actually think about the actual parts of an application. Cool. I can't see the next slide, so that's going to happen sometimes. And so what we need to do is we need to start thinking about what does it mean to be a rich web application in the browser, right? Like, and maybe like some of us get, some of us work on web pages, and I think some of us work on web applications. Both inherently difficult for different reasons, right? The New York Times cares a lot more about time to first meaningful paint than the engineers that work on Gmail, right? You watch a loading bar in Gmail, right? And like, you have different needs and you have different things depending on the kind of application you're building. Ooh, those fonts held up. So I would like to argue that there are a few different layers of an application that matter, right? There is the user interface, which is, I think, at one point of VP, my company that no longer works there, said I made stuff pretty. They clearly have not seen my design skills. We've got state management, location within the application, which I would call like using the URL to maintain some amount of state. Right? Where you are currently in the application can and should be defined by the URL. Is that list sorted ascendingly or descendingly, right? Would you like to keep it that way? Maybe you should store that in the URL. Can I grab a random URL from your application and send it to my friend and have that person be able to pull up relatively the same place in the application, or are you a banking app, right? And finally, a thing that like a lot of like Excel and things don't have to deal with is this idea of communication with the server, right? Like most of our data is not stored on the client unless we've gotten very fancy with service workers. So there are, kind of traditional like iOS and macOS and Windows applications is this model view controller idea. And I would like to argue that there's also just routing and data fetching on top of that. We can grab some of the patterns for building applications and use those in our web applications to basically not rewrite the application. This could be on a future slide, but just in case it's not, like one of my favorite jokes that I made up is that React is great. It's like just a view layer as the engineers proceed to shove everything into the view layer, right? Like jQuery is like that too, if you try hard enough. And so thinking about the application, and we're going to talk a little bit about React because the app I work on is in React, and frankly, I'm not an idiot. I understand that it's roughly the lingua franca these days, even though I don't like it. But also, like a lot of these ideas are stolen from other frameworks, right? They're ideas that you can probably use in anything. So if you're into Vue, if you're into Ember, or whatever, some of these ideas will hold up. So let's start at the smallest possible level. This idea of the single responsibility principle, right? If you need to use the word "and" when describing what a part of your application does, you fucked up, right? Like the idea of you break our application into the tiniest possible pieces. Yeah, it displays the list of to-do items and also fetches them from the server. You blew it, right? Yeah, right, PHP, right? You do it in any direction, right? And so this idea of like figuring out like what are the tiniest pieces of our application and how do we arrange them? So here's a not monospaced code example. This is one that will fetch all of the campaigns and marketing campaigns and also display it on the page, right? This is not real code in our code base because frankly it has to fit on a keynote slide. This is just kind of an idea. It does both, and that's not great. Like the kind of like first thing that you can possibly do is begin to break those up, right? And this is framework agnostic, right? Start to take, anytime you say the word "and," that is two different pieces of your code base. Because you basically, by baking them together, you have screwed up your ability to reuse that stuff. And then by you screwing up your ability to reuse that stuff, you're going to do the same code over and over and over again, which means you will one day, future you will get that ticket where they have to be like, all right, we want to change, like they made one tiny change to the API contract and 2 weeks of your life are gone. And your favorite QE's life are also gone, right? Nobody's happy about this. So yeah, the tired pattern is having components to do multiple things. The wired is starting to separate them out, and inspired is creating reusable higher order components, right? This idea that we can like take out this idea of fetching something from the API, and we can use it all over the place. Now, API contract changes, right? We take this to a much further extreme that we'll get into in a heartbeat, but this is to get everyone on the same page. We change the way that we interact with the API, all of a sudden we change it one place and we get it everywhere, right? That is the way that you can have a relatively small team be able to ship large pieces of code, is by just not like lighting time on fire. And then you begin to like add those together to kind of build the functionality that you need. Just like basically, oh, we need to ship a new feature, get a bunch of these little connects pieces, connect them together, and you have your new feature. If a thing feels hard, right? Like one of my jobs, on top of telling people no, this is a large part of my job. The other part of my job is basically listening to when people are complaining, and then explaining to them that life doesn't have to be like that. Right, like this, like you know the thing, like I don't know if you have this, right? Where there's a ticket, well that involves whatever subsystem, and then all of a sudden it went from a 2-point ticket. Someone says, well that involves the whatever. Oh, 8 points. All right, like listening for those things and being like, okay, this doesn't need to be like this. Like, how do we actually work through this and break it apart? Because this tech debt, eventually you're underwater on your mortgage. All right, the other part is this idea of separating state from the UI, right? Like, you know, jQuery, the reason, like jQuery itself as a library is fantastic. The reason that we hate it is because it allows us to do bad things, right? It allows us to basically use the DOM as a way to store all the state of our application and just like move it around for funsies, right? And that makes sense. But like, you can do some really dark shit in React, right? You can basically reinvent jQuery in React. I've seen code bases where on a component did mount, jQuery comes in. Just saying. But like, even with no jQuery, you can do some dark shit, right? And so there's a bunch of ways to separate out that state management, right? Like, so we use Redux, the idea that everything is in one place. If like 5 different, like his current user, that's all I have to say. Everything needs current user, right? And like, you don't want to slam your API on that. So like storing it somewhere, right? Some kind of manifestation. Right? We chose Redux mostly because the context API was like 2 days old when we had to make the choice. And part of my other job is to like, I used to be the like, what's the new hot shit? And now I'm like, I'm very old. My beard is getting somewhat gray. I'm not that old. it's the software, I swear. I can run for president now. That's true. I could run for, this is the first time I could, I'm not that old. But like, it's the software. Yeah, I think I have to figure some stuff out, but yeah, into it. You know, so something in Redux, and then we get to like pull out those things. So like the idea of Redux, right? So most ideas that you love are stolen from somewhere else. Redux is effectively stolen from Elm, which stole it from a bunch of functional programming like literature, right? And this idea of like a sustainable way to manage state, right? If you don't use Redux, if you have your own things in place, that's cool too. I stole from literally every framework. But this idea that you have just a set of state, like things happen in your application. This is like the 3-minute, I'm gonna teach you Redux. You have a current state of the world, you have things that happen, the current state of the world and the thing that happened go into this thing called a reducer and fight it out. And then new state of the world that comes out the other end and tells you UI about it. Right? The important point, that's Redux by the way, that's all of it. Like, if you got nothing else on this, like finally, you didn't cry reading the Redux docs. Right? Like, the important part is all of your state, this is like the key, all of your state is totally divorced from your application, right? And you manage it separately, and then effectively, declarative, I think I told you I didn't know. But like all of the actual UI is basically, and this is really powerful, all the UI is basically taken completely separate from your application, and with that state, your UI is based off those rules. The same way like CSS is like this as much as we make fun of it. You just write a bunch of rules about how shit should look. And then it works. And then we made it hard. Because this also sucks. Right? But like, because I did, you pull it out completely. Now you have two separate parts of your application. You're allowed to change your mind about things. The other cool part about this is that if you really wanted to, you could have support give you that entire JSON object from Redux. And you could create this to the world in development. Because I love users. They pay my bills. But you get that bug, like it doesn't work. Great. It's really great when we have a case where instead we can be like, give me the entire JSON state of the world. I can recreate that bug super simply and then go ahead and actually begin to debug it. And the same pattern that we saw before of like being able to pull it from the state and connect it to the UI exists here as well. So what we did is and this is actually stolen from Ember instead. When we started, the reason we had to rewrite the app was that we were going to move everything to AWS because we were getting to the point in scale where we either needed to switch to a cloud provider or become a cloud provider. One of those options is stupid. We chose the non-stupid one. And so like the previous version of marketing campaigns was jQuery and CoffeeScript in a Rails code base. They ripped that out and they put a React hat on it. And so then the plan was like, we're going to take out the Rails. And at one point they had this idea where we're going to maintain two versions of the app and simultaneously. I cursed a lot that day. And so when we moved to AWS, that was a new and unproven thing for us. So one of the things that we did was we decided like, hey, we know this API is going to change all the time. Right? We know the future of this application is going to change a lot. I don't want to change things. So what we did is we came up with this pattern, again, stolen from Ember. Ember has this idea of adapters and serializers, right? Which is, there is a layer between when you make an API call and when that data gets into your application, right? Cool, because backend engineers hate us. I don't know why. They say that we're friends, and then they give me APIs I can't work with. And so what it allows us to do is have a layer in our application where we can make the API calls and get whatever comes back from the API, and then morph it into a data structure that makes sense for the UI, right? And then throughout the entire user interface, we go ahead and just use that version that we made for ourselves because we love ourselves, right? And we use that part everywhere. API changes, what do? We tweak that one tiny function that does the transformation. I don't have to go to every component that uses current user and switch camel case to a snake case or something along those lines. Or like a lot of stuff, right? But like now, oh, you need a new feature? Cool, it's fine. What we're just going to do is we're going to just tweak this one thing and now we have all of that new data structure. None of the app changes. This is very similar to what we were talking with Redux before. The ability to change your mind and separate stuff into instead of a monkey fist of sadness will be better for you. So yeah, API data goes in, it goes to the adapter, and then we get what we call the user interface data, right? Again, it's just a pure function. It's just morphing an object. You could write this right now by saying, like, Walmart Pizza style, take a sip of your beer, and like write a function that transfers one object to another object. You could do it, but having everything pass through this layer is the difference between like what I would say like, is what makes it an architecture. The idea that we have 30 people on board with this, and it is the way that we roll, and we can have junior engineers shipping code in their first week, is because I'm a dictatorial asshole. Sorry, I just gave away the actual plot line. And so Redux, for instance, doesn't have any idea of data fetching, so you have to do something along those lines. We use Redux Observable, which means we take it one step further. Right? Redux is abstracting all of our state out of our UI. Redux Observable is using RxJS to take all of the data fetching out of Redux, right? Which means we can do really cool stuff like, oh, did they slam the save button 5 times? Maybe we only take that first one if the data hasn't changed, right? Maybe you can do throttle, you can do bouncing, you can do all sorts of stuff with the kind of like timeline of your database. So we basically take the time space continuum out of Redux and begin to work with there where we can write all the kind of like, oh, they left that page? Well, I don't actually want to fire the action when the AJAX call comes back anymore, right? Because like, God knows what that will do. And so we can be like, all right, we're no longer listening for complete events anymore, right? So they need to think about all the pieces of your application and pulling them apart into different layers and kind of just effectively taking the, you can do whatever you want in React or whatever your favorite framework is, and adding some like sanity to it. And there's a certain like soft skills part of this where you actually have to buy in around this, right? But being able to work with the teams to like see some of the advantages of this and being able to work with product to give you the kind of like points in a sprint to be able to go and like do the work, being able to say like, hey, we're pretty sure, right, that we can do this. When we decided to do the rewrite, everyone thought the front end was going to be the long pole, which means the most amount of work. We actually ended up coming in a month early, right? Which is not a thing that happens in software engineering. Our food, like, so at Twilio, we get like free lunch. Come work with us. This is literally great. The SendGrid we do at Twilio, they don't. So we'll see how long that lasts. Lunch was late, and everyone was complaining. I'm like, you're software engineers. You've never done anything on time ever. Why are you complaining about lunch? So yeah, consider something. And so this was actually a fight. The fight was somebody wanted to use Redux Thumb because it's just a function. You can do whatever you want. And I said, no. And they're like, why? Because it's just functions and you can do whatever you want. Right? There is a lot on that convention configuration thing when you're trying to actually ship stuff sustainably. Going more to that convention side is actually incredibly smart, even though you have to have a lot of conversations to get anything done. Right? Same reason we use like TypeScript and all those things. Like having rules and actually thinking this stuff out and being intentional, like pays off in dividends, even if everyone hates you in the first like few weeks of the project. All right, let's talk about building composable components, which is going to be really hard to say. So what is composability, right? Really, we talked about single responsibility, which is just an idea. Encapsulation, where we took all those different layers and we pulled them apart, is another pattern. Composability is how do you bring it all back together. So, you know, in the SendGrid product, we have a bunch of editors, right? We have the sign-up form editor. Look at it, just look at it. We've got, this one looks like the template editor. Look at it. This is the code editor for a single set campaign. View it. They're all kind of the same, right? And there was a fight that we had early on about like, we'll just put a bunch of conditional logic and have one editor and it will be easy, right? I see both laughing and like horror, right? And my thing was like, no, what we'll do is we'll build all the pieces. Like we'll have a sidebar. We'll have all the different parts where we got a request like, all right, if we wanted to be able to do something that sent like, let's say one company that sent one kind of message got bought by another one. I can't say certain things anymore. Like if we wanted to send the other kind of message, it's not email. Like how long would it take to build an editor on like a sprint, right? Because like we have all the sidebars, we have all the previews, we have the mobile, like we can basically build a part where we take all these things and we kind of pull them apart into all their pieces. The idea of making a new editor, because like while there feels like product thinks there's 3 editors, under the hood there's about 12. Right, for all the different permutations. And we get the ability to make a change to the settings tab and get it everywhere that you would get from like the kind of monolith component. And at the same time, with the ability to just compose all new subversions without adding so much cyclomatic complexity. That's just like fancy terms for if statements. That like you can't actually get anything done. You know, so the idea of if you can't unit test it, you probably fucked up. Right. This idea of like, I think test-driven development is kind of stupid. The only reason I think it's a good idea is that if you start with tests, you have to write testable code. If you don't start with tests, you can create a monkey fist of sadness that involves a bunch of global space that you can't do shit about. Like, I don't care if you throw the tests away afterwards, because like, man, at a certain point, like the time to run those tests gets really big. Everything a component needs, just pass it into it. Yeah, don't even like require it. Like have the API be able to like pass it in from a place you can do it, and then you're able to like pass in either like fake versions of stuff. Like, okay, because it's not making network calls, I can just pass in a campaigns list to see if it's actually showing me the right number of campaigns, right, or whatever that is, right? When in doubt, if you can pass something into a function or pass it into a component rather than having it available in upper scope, do that, right? We all have IntelliSense because we're all using Visual Studio Code, right? There's like, all right, what is the Vim users? All right, do we got an Emacs user in the room? Of course. Spacemax, my dude? Yeah. All right, called it. Spacemax is Vim implemented in Emacs, right? We can talk about foot pedals later. Cool. So we can pass everything into a component. So we pass all of the configuration in there as well. The really cool thing is, so we have a product at Twilio that we're working on called Flex. And Flex is kind of gnarly, right, in a good way, right? And so, like, you know, we all make, most of us, like, most of your apps are SaaS products, right? Like, they log in, they do their thing. The idea of Flex is like, oh, you want to run a call center? Cool. We'll give you the software, and we'll give you all these React components that you can configure and use to build your own, like, logic out of, right? And so that adds a whole new level of having to let other people customize it. And, like, we've realized that this is kind of a thing for us. Like, we can actually make a ton of money doing this, right? And so figuring out how to do that everywhere. So having the ability to pass in all configuration, right, means that we can do some really cool stuff by, like, going to this other model. And the really cool thing is, in the marketing campaigns product, we didn't know about that when we did this architecture. Basically, we knew that shit was changing. We knew we were going to have a bunch of teams. So we did it on the ground up. So I had to do a whole write-up on what are we going to have to do if we want to go ahead and be able to, like, do the full, like, to do this with a marketing project. And arguably, it was, like, not that much work, right? It was not going to be a rewrite. Thank God for the job. Right, and so you can use the context API in React if you want to pass it to multiple things as well. There's a lot of cool APIs for this. Basically, how do you think about stuff? Every one of these frameworks has a way to do it now. Ember has services. I don't know what it is. Having the ability to separate it out too means we can put every component in Storybook and do snapshot tests, which means we can do image snapshots, which means if someone fucks up the CSS, a test will fail. Boom, right? Because it doesn't have to be in the entire app because writing integration test sucks. And then we can break it out into its own component library. Cool. And then Flex actually adds this really cool thing where because we want to let other people customize the UI, we actually have APIs where, oh, you want to add a component in between these other two? Cool, we can actually expose that to, like, consumers using the product, right? So a good architecture for ourselves actually turns into an architecture that we can actually have third parties build plugins for incredibly easily, like, not on one. All right, final part. By accident, this part is really called how to convince product to let you do these things so they don't care, which is one of the fights I get into sometimes, which is like, well, we don't get complaints about performance. I'm like, yeah, because, like, if you send 2 emails, you're gonna get complaints. If you send duplicate text messages, you're gonna get complaints. If your app just kind of sucks, they're just gonna go somewhere else, right? And so yeah, like the whole thing of, like, I'll take out one image and that'll let me ship another megabyte of JavaScript. Except, like, no, that doesn't work because, like, you're literally sending source code that has to get compiled by a browser. And that's not a great look because it's not just sending an image, it's actually doing all this other stuff. And so, like, a heuristic of 300 kilobytes for every, like, module or bundle is actually good, right? Because one of the things that we found out is this is the kind of, like, all the numbers removed distribution of usage of the marketing campaigns application, right? For a company that only currently takes US dollars, it's pretty impressive that you can see, like, United States, obviously, dark purple, Canada, Brazil, India, Japan, and London are some of our biggest clients. Like, we can make some assumptions that the average computer, like, I'm using a $3,000 MacBook, but the average, like, computer in one of these other countries are not. So the cost of some of that performance is huge, and it's a large revenue source for us. So by having a whole bunch of modules, right, we can import them using lazy loading. This is actually in the ES something or other spec at this point, probably 2015, but, like, Node can't get on board. So here it is. I'm not gonna make any friends in the live stream. The ability to, like, arbitrarily, like, lazy load additional modules. Maybe they don't need that editor if they're just trying to upload context. That's totally fine. We don't send them the editor until they actually need it. So we begin to load each different page as you go along and build up the application as you do. So this is a given component where, okay, you landed on this page, then we'll go load it. So we progressively load more and more of the application. So as you can see, instead of, like, sending one bundle, which is the previous version of our application, which was like 11 seconds, we had a 13x performance improvement, like, moving to this model in Sydney, for instance, right? We also, like, with CDNs are involved too. But, like, huge, because previously was served from a Rails app in Chicago. The further you get from Chicago, the worse it gets. All right, same as a pizza. So for us, even like on my $3,000 MacBook, I did a quick test, and you can see that we had a 50% improvement in initial parse time just by beginning to ship less code. My golden rule of performance is not doing stuff is faster than doing stuff. So if you don't send code to the browser and it needs to get parsed, way fucking faster, right? And you just do that a whole bunch of times, and all of a sudden your performance goes. All right, cool. Questions, comments, concerns, cries of outrage, things that I said that were offensive to you. Curious.
I recognize wired, tired, and inspired.
I think it's a meme.
Is that just me?
No, it's a meme. I don't know either. It's a meme I learned from young people. Yeah.
You said you don't like React. Why and what do you like?
I don't like React because something like, on that convention configuration framework, right? React is great because you can get up and running with React real fast. React is terrible in a large organization. Oh, do you want to have middleware for fetching data in Redux? Cool, let's have a meeting. And just take whoever wants to use React Stump and Redux Observable, and the person who doesn't want to use Redux Sagas because they don't like the generator syntax, and let's have a conversation until we can reach an agreement. Oh, are we going to use MobX or Redux? Let's have a meeting. Is it going to be React Router or whatever? I think there's like another, or which version of React Router, to be honest. What?
Reach router.
Reach Router,
Oh,
right?
wait, that's going back into React.
Yeah, all right, exactly, right? Because at the time it was like React Router 2, 3, and 4 were both out and brand new. Like 4 was out, but 3 was in beta or something like that. Right? And like everything was a conversation. Like React as itself as a technology, I also have some problems with, but is generally speaking really fantastic. React as somebody who has to like get herd cats and get 30 people to agree on anything, it's really tiring. Versus Ember or something, right? Or Angular or any of the rest of them, like there's a router in there. You're getting RxJS with you like they're not in Angular. You're getting this like Ember data in Ember. Like there's no conversations. Like, and I'm really tired. What I'm trying to say is I'm exhausted, right? My only technical problem with React is I do think what made React amazing when it first shipped is it's also its Achilles heel, which the whole virtual DOM implementation was fantastic. The idea that like you can use any JavaScript, which means you really can't do a lot of compile time optimizations, right? If you look at Glimmer inside of Ember, a lot of stuff happening in Angular. At compile time, they can like take the templating and boil it down to bytecode. And because you can use all of JavaScript in JSX, you can't do that right now. React is still amazing. I made other teams use React. I'm the person that told people they couldn't use Vue or Helm. So as much as I poke fun at React, like I am the person that made everyone use React. So also if you're gonna hire, you might want to be a React shop, right? You can assume that and the other thing is too, like we have a relatively small team. I don't want to be the first person to solve a bug. Like I can't afford that. I can't afford to be the first thing in a brand new framework, right? Like choosing boring technologies is at a certain point necessary to survival.
So if you weren't using React, what would you be using?
I'm gonna pick React, but if we're not doing that. I would probably pick Ember, and I get it, right? Nobody uses Ember, right? I'm gonna be the guy that after jQuery 1, I was like, MooTools was the best, right? Ember was cool because I think it did think a lot of stuff out. Ember stole a lot of stuff from Rails and stole a lot of stuff from Objective-C and Cocoa and iOS because it came out of Sprout Core, which is an Apple product. And Apple knows a thing or two about building UIs, right? So it's the thing they've done in the past, relatively consistently. And so it basically stole a lot of good ideas along those, and basically makes all of those decisions for you. I think I've heard Modern Angular does a lot of the same. Does someone back me up on that? So I'm not totally lying. Modern Angular, good. All right, we got 1 thumbs up for Modern Angular too. Vue looks incredible, and I've never heard someone talk shit about Vue. That either means that not enough people are using it, or that it is actually that good. It's kind of the same thing with Lisp, right? When's the last time you saw someone shit talking Lisp? When's the last time you saw someone using Lisp, right? But I think Vue seems really I think none of them are bad, right? It's just the things you have to think about at a certain amount of scale is can you hire for this? It's actually a thing that we have to think about. Like, how long will it take to train up a new developer on our team, right? Because at the rate that we're hiring, and like I feel really strongly about hiring juniors. I want to be able to hire juniors, and I want that junior to feel super fucking productive on that team within a week or two. If people can started up real fast without that learning curve, right? That is absolutely huge to retaining great talent. And so I think like keeping more than just technology in there, right, is important, right? So I both talk shit. I mean, I think I was equally talking shit about all of them, so that's fine. Except for any other time. Let's do in the back and the row.
Your thoughts on using a microservice oriented versus having that shared model?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. What are the thoughts on micro front ends versus a monolith? Matt, what, you got us for your next one? So it's interesting too. Like I'm doing actually a lot of research on this. So the other part of my job is like calling up people at bigger companies and going like, "What do you hate about your current architecture?" So you think about a lot of the, if you're a tiny app, if you are a tiny app, then you should be a monolith, right? What I learned is that like a lot of the bigger apps, like your Facebooks and your Googles, are monoliths, right? It's only in the middle that people try the micro front. Micro front ends are hard because microservices make sense, even though microservices make being a front end engineer real fucking hard. Which is all of these isolated services that don't know anything about each other. Where does it all come together, right? But I think on the front end, like the idea of like, all right, so now you have multiple versions of React Router or React and Elm or something along those lines. You have to like be able to tie all those things together, and you have to make the decision of like, does the complexity cost help, right? And so for marketing campaigns, we drew up all these diagrams of Rube Goldberg machines, right? Where we're gonna have like, all right, we'll have like 6 repos, and everyone can deploy, and there'll be a mothership that's got a router, and it hooks into all the things, and like we're like, well, we have 2 teams. What are we doing? And so we opted to do a monolith, which has actually, as we've grown to 6 teams, has not. Every time it's like, this is getting out of control. We need to do this. I'm like, no, it's almost always a process issue. It's almost always like, well, there's one staging environment. I'm like, okay, let's make more staging environments. Right? I try not to do that face at work. But like, and figuring out that kind of stuff. However, like, at what point does it make sense to do that, right? Like, so for instance, like, like obviously marketing campaigns to make if there's all one app, and you don't want to have that like jump up the page as you go from one to the other, right? You want to have them have that like single page app experience shared all the way through. You do need to figure out how to show user state. Like, if you can pull off a micro front end architecture, I think it's amazing. I just haven't seen it pulled off yet, right? And so like I want it, right? And so when we think about like, okay, but now like, as we think about Twilio size, all right, like, well, no, does it make sense to actually like these things already began separate, right? Like some of the like Twilio Studio or Flex or the function stuff, right? And marketing campaigns, or the email API stuff, that all started as separate. Moving that all into one repo is untenable, right? That will never happen. And so at that point, like, do we need to have almost like not a macro front end architecture, not a micro, but like large chunks that are all like fairly large repos, and then we're going to build a mothership. And that mothership is going to load the applications as they're requested based on routing, which is the same idea as before. So like, what are the trade-offs, right? Like in a really small app, no. And if you can probably avoid it, I don't actually know, because it's like most of the complaints about that architecture are like, my pull requests, I can't find them all, right? Kind of stuff. I had to merge master man again, right? You can usually solve that with build tools. But at a large scale, where we have a whole bunch of small applications, like we can't do the monolith anymore, right? Now, this is scary to me because my job is to not fuck shit up, and I don't know how we're going to do it yet. If we can do it, great. I don't know how to do it. With live streams, right? Yeah, I hope my boss is watching. I'm already fired. Cool. I should check my text at some point. Don't come in tomorrow. Yeah.
I can relate a lot. We just got off a big React rewrite.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it's a good thing.
That sounds like my last breakup. I'm heartbroken. It was a good thing. I'll be stronger for it.
The question is, we can relate to a lot of the same issues of like getting people, getting convention and still
Yeah.
and one of the big problem areas, and we're working outside of our organization, so it was like a community spread of other organizations, was kind of the classic React components where they do their function approach. And you know, we had battles on this.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you were like able to establish conventions or in your app or kind of in where you guys.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the process of some of this stuff, right? Because how we do front end is at SendGrid is probably not like a great example, except it is great to show the scale of it. But the way we do architecture at Twilio is fascinating, right? Which is architects who do not sit in an ivory tower and say how stuff is going to get done. Basically, the way we use this blueprint process, where individuals, like we believe really strongly that the people closest to the problems are in the best position to solve them, right? So an architect will not write the blueprint for how we do something, right? Instead, the team will do it, right? And this isn't like I'll round it back to the functional component versus class component. I'll try. And then the architect for your team has to go pitch it to the rest of the architects. The whole idea here being like, can someone else explain your idea? And then obviously the whole idea is like, is this scalable and stuff along those lines? And then it comes back down. And when you get to that point where it's a push on like, how do we solve this, right? Like having like, this is like, I'm like now far enough into my career where I say businessy things. Like having some framework for decision-making process, right? Like at the end of the day, like, so we have a decision-making process throughout all of this called the rapid one, which is slightly bullshit. And I'll tell you why. Like it's great, but the acronym is not. I'll just say that the P in rapid is perform, and these are the people who have to do the work. They're not the decision-making process by definition, right? So it's more like rate. So you have the people who can recommend, the people who have to agree, the people who just get input, and then at the end of the day, somebody is the decider, right? And you like setting that up kind of as you like, because waiting until everyone's pissed at each other to do that, not great. Setting up for like these types of things, like here's the process how we're gonna make decisions, and this is when it ends. That's key, right? Like this is when this ends, and this is who gets to make the call after they've heard all the decisions. There's a lot of like building trust and stuff along those lines. But like effectively saying like, okay, how are we gonna make the call? My basic thing is like, with a lot of this stuff, it's like walking that very fine line of, we didn't choose a context API, for instance, because it was 1 month old. That was effectively a one-way door decision, right? Like, honestly, like function components versus class components, like I would say use the function components because I think you can smell like where the wind is blowing. But like that's almost a two-way decision because you could write like a JS code mod to convert all the components later, right? And so if it's a two-way door, fuck it, right? If it's a one-way door, have a framework and a process for making decisions. Did that answer the question? That was best as I can answer that question. Cool. Anything else? Wes, do you have a question? All right, sweet.
I feel like your discussion of modularity kind of implies that it's only one way doors.
No, I mean, stuff you can change. That's not an answer to that question. Stuff you can change is not, yeah. Yeah, like it is building as many, like by only having to change a small piece, right? Like because everything is jammed in everywhere and you can't track anything down, everything is a long way, right? If it is go find the piece, you can go and find just that tiny component. Like think about the API changes, right? Like, are there one-way doors, two-way doors? I don't know, right? But like the idea that like we can fix it in a one-point ticket, like makes all of that like soul crushingness of like, okay, the API's changed again. Okay, the API's changed again, right? Like getting this, basically, if it is a one-way door and you can't change that, creating the surface area for sadness and like getting it as small as possible is your next best bet. Yeah. All right, I'll talk about other stuff later if you want. You can always hit me up. Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve, for coming out to speak. Good shit as always. There's plenty of beer, so if you want to stick around, nerd out, have a drink, not have a drink, still fine. Hang out.
If you submitted stuff during JavaScript land, come and see me and we'll do the.
That's it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Oh man, how are you?